And this is Ken Kreitzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio, representing Squadron 135 of the Sons of the American Legion, based at Post 135 in White Plains, New York. Now, today we're very pleased to have a special guest with us, calling in from West Point. That is Col Andrew Hall, who's the director of the Army Cyber Institute. Colonel Hall, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your program.
Our pleasure. It's really, you've had a terrific career. Maybe just start by describing to our audience the Army Cyber Institute. You're right next to the West Point campus up there. Tell us a little bit about it, if you would, to start.
Yeah, so the Army Cyber Institute is a think tank that was established at West Point by General Alexander, General Odierno, General Rhett Hernandez, and the gentlemen that were leading the Army cyber community believed that we needed to have a place that would think about the future problems of the cyber domain. And the natural place when you think of groundbreaking thinking is at West Point. And as West Point was the first engineering school in the nation, it was a perfect place to put the Army Cyber Institute. So it's a organization. Right now we have just over 60 people that work directly for the superintendent. So the organization is a part of the United States Military Academy at West Point, and we are located in West Point at what they call New South Post. And we have a group of researchers that teach in 9 of our 13 academic departments, teaching everything from cyber law, cyber ethics, to the more technical aspects of malware analysis or forensics. And the teammates are a mixture of military personnel. We have military from across the various specialties that work with the networks, from the signal, military intelligence, the cyber communities, as well as our electronic warfare and information warfare, psychological warfare specialties that work on the different parts of non-lethal effects within the expanding role of war during competition. And so we have an opportunity to publish a journal, the Cyber Defense Review, which we publish 4 times a year, and an annual conference that we host in Washington, D.C., along with the Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Tallinn, Estonia, which is the NATO-accredited focus for cybersecurity research.
And just, we've followed the development of the branch, the cyber branch, and one of the Army football players that we covered, a very good halfback, Malik Hancock, had a terrific academic career at West Point, went into cyber. You were involved with the start of the Army cyber branch about 10 years ago. Tell us a little bit about why the Army decided to start a cyber branch, if you would.
Sure. Part of the reason that we identified a need for the cyber branch was that within the Army we have roles that are filled by commanders and roles that are filled by staffs. And all the roles are important, but the primary role of our communicators and our intelligence officers has been on staffs to support their commander. And although a very important role, we viewed that the future of cyber quite possibly was the role of being a commander in this new domain. And so we worked together with the TRADOC commander at the time, who was General Perkins, and his vision was a vision of a cavalryman in cyberspace. And so we looked to create a new branch that would be able to engage with the enemy, keep us safe, do the fighting in this new domain. And we decided to call this the cyber branch. And it was, we chose the number 17, which for all geeks is good. It's a nice prime number. And it's also a number that we could associate with someone that was going to be a commander in cyberspace going forward. We also found that the domain needed integration. And so you needed to have some people that were focused, that would have a variety of skill sets, but would focus on working in cyber for an entire career. the military intelligence and the signal community could not contribute specialists that they could guarantee would be able to work their entire career within cyber. And military intelligence still has a very important role within cyber. It's just that the intelligence specialists will go in and out of working with cyber, working with other sorts of intelligence products. And the cyber branch was really designed to have a group of officers that would spend their entire time working with the soldiers that would be the specialists and the world-class hackers that we would need.
Well, we had a chance to sit in on a session at the Association of the U.S. Army Conference in Washington last year, where Army Secretary McCarthy and Army Chief of Staff General McConville talked about the many elements of modernizing the Army, and I think cyber was really a very integral part of that that they want to develop and develop world-class excellence and maintain that. How does cyber and what you're doing at the Institute fit into the overall Army?
Well, the Army has a cyber community, and then it has the entire Army. And if you think of the Army cyber community, we have a Army operational organization, which is headquarters right now to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, but is soon moving down to Fort Gordon. And then we've got a TRADOC headquarters, which is our Cyber Center of Excellence, which is down at Fort Gordon. And then we have the Army Cyber Institute as the three large elements within the Army. And there's about 19,000 soldiers and civilians that are a part of the Army Cyber Command, which is our operational element. And there's about 1,900 that are a part of our training down at Fort Gordon that do the basic training and the advanced training for our officers and enlisted in the cyber specialties. And so while they've got the responsibilities for operations and then the training and leader development of our force down at Fort Gordon, we're looking at the future and trying to find the problems of the future. So we are working much as the scouts to try to ensure we don't have strategic surprise, looking a couple hilltops forward to try to see where we think the Army is going to be going. At the same time as we're researching and trying to advance what the Army knows about cyber, we work with some of the rest of the Army to try to help them with their cyber problems, because there's cyber issues for the entire Army. So we do quite a bit of work with the special operations community as the different kinds of special forces units are encountering problems with cyber. One of the advantages of working with this community is they're used to quickly trying to solve problems. And so we're able to come in and prototype things with them and then let the special forces community take those ideas and run with them. The other thing that we've worked with is we've worked with our Army partners that work with our friends and allies around the globe. For example, we worked with Army South, which has a responsibility for South America. And we have sent some of our experts on trips with the Army South team to provide products that the Army Cyber Institute created and translated into Spanish so that we would be able to have a way to talk with our allies to make our allies stronger and make our partners better. And so we work across the entire Army, not just with the cyber community, but with all soldiers, trying to ensure that everyone can operate within the cyber domain. The cyber branch and the cyber force is designed to really be the experts within cyber, but everyone has to be able to operate within the environment that now is such an important part of our life.
Well, certainly. Now, we had the chance a couple of years ago, actually, I think 3 times, to sit in on the West Point cyber competition that was held against the National Security Agency and and several other colleges, including the other service academies. Tremendous competition in that event, and I know that's only one of a number of competitions that your students and faculty participate in. Tell us a little bit about some of the activities of the Army Cyber Institute.
One of the things that we like to do is have the extracurricular activities that support the development outside of the classroom. We think that inside the classroom work is essential, but you really learn how to work with people to work on technical teams outside of the classroom. And so in addition to the wonderful competition that was hosted by the National Security Agency among all of the academies, we also host the All Army Cyber Stakes each year. And this year we had teams from Great Britain, teams from Estonia, as well as from ROTC and the academies across the United States. And they all got a chance to work for 2 weeks solving puzzles. And some really appreciate the opportunity to have these kinds of structured puzzles where you get a chance to try different tools and different techniques, and you have the natural competition. And these are individual activities, and they're really exciting, and especially during this time of coronavirus, gave us a lot of opportunity for our soldiers and our cadets to participate. But another opportunity that we really think is important is our cyber policy team. And the cyber policy team is a mixture of experts that are interested in law and cyber policy and tech issues. And they come together as a team, and they are within the competition given a scenario, and they have to come up with a solution to the scenario. And they have to work with their knowledge of the technology as well as their knowledge of policy and law to come up with the best solution. And in the confines of the game, they end up briefing the senior leaders of the game to try to see who has the best ideas on how they would go forward. And this cyber policy, which we call it the Cyber 912 Club, was founded by the Atlantic Council. And it really has been a great opportunity to bring the cyber endeavor and the cyber domain to a wider range of students, and also to focus on those team skills that are so important to being an effective cyber team.
And certainly STEM education is a big part, that really the foundation of what you're doing with the educations of students. You're a product of STEM education out of the Seattle, Washington area. I read about an inspirational professor that you had in high school and you're going to West Point. Tell us a little bit about the importance of STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math to what you're doing and how it's been important to your career.
I think the importance of a broad education early is that you don't close any doors. You never are quite sure what a junior high school child is going to be the best in the world at. But if we don't provide them with the basis to build upon, then we start to close their doors. And it's really important to focus on the interplay of the scientific method as well as the mathematics that you use to make arguments, in addition to the ideas that come out when one studies chemistry and physics. I think the notion of studying history is crucial, and the notion of studying English and being able to communicate all work together. And the student that is well versed in these topics is better set to go on. We often believe that the math teacher is just going to be the additional duty for your wrestling coach, and we really need to have teachers at all levels that have a passion for the field. I like to tell a story of my chemistry teacher in high school, who was also my physics teacher. And when I got to West Point, I realized that he was definitely a chemist, because he had prepared me very well for chemistry class, and physics was still quite a challenge.
Well, it's neat to hear that. We have seen the growth of STEM education. There was a wonderful STEM education expo at the White Plains High School we attended last year, and children, students of all ages through high school were very active in participating in that. Now tell us a little bit about your time at West Point. You played sprint football, which one of our colleagues in Sons of the American Legion Radio did, Colonel Sam Houston, a few years before you did. And your choice to go to the infantry branch of the Army as a starting point in your career.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to play intramural athletics at West Point my first year, and got a chance to play intramural football, which was quite an experience. At West Point at the time, we played Washington State B8 rules, which was the full pads, 8-person football, which was really a fast game, and it was a lot of fun. It was also great as a freshman to get a chance to line up against the upperclassmen, because I got to play right guard that season. And with a lot of pulling and trapping, you caught a lot of unsuspecting nose tackles and defensive tackles, and it was always fun to have knocked the upperclassmen on the other side to the ground. And I think that we have a new knowledge where we take a look at the head injuries and such, and some are concerned about football, but it really is an important part of development. And I'm always conflicted on how we should be going forward, because I know that really the answer is to get the best helmets that we can and to teach people how to play safely so that we can still have these kinds of fun events.
Well,
But as when I got to West Point, I had kind of thought that I would be in the infantry, but I really didn't know that I didn't know the variety of things that the Army did. I came out of a product of the Boy Scouts in Washington State and spending my time at Camp Parsons on the Olympic Peninsula, spending time hiking in the Olympics and the Cascades. So I thought that joining the Army, I'd get to be a grown-up Boy Scout. And it turns out that if you join the infantry, you basically get to be a grown-up Boy Scout. You get to work with small units, and you get to spend time in the field. I really enjoyed that aspect of my training at West Point, and then I got a chance to join that with my initial career outside of West Point. I had grown up in Seattle, and so we have the 2nd Battalion of the 75th Ranger Regiment is at Fort Lewis, and that was when I was a kid. That's what I thought that I would like to do, and so I got a chance to graduate from West Point, go to airborne school and ranger school, and then end up at Fort Ord in California with the 7th Infantry Division Light, which was one of our premier light infantry divisions during the 90s.
Well, you served overseas in your combat arms roles. I read in Saudi Arabia and Korea. Tell us a little bit about your service on deployments overseas.
It was really very fascinating to spend some time in Korea. It was great to meet the people, and it was fun to be on our Bradleys and be able to basically drive all over the country. We always had to have permission before we were going somewhere, but being able to drive across the rice paddies and see the land before you was pretty neat. One of the really exciting things we got to do in Korea was bring back some of the veterans from the 50s era, and it was really rewarding, both for us and for them, because they saw how Seoul had changed. Most of them, when they left, Seoul was leveled, and they came back and it was a thriving city. We'd take them up and around, and they saw how everything that they had sacrificed for and that their friends had sacrificed for had been worth it, that we had made a difference for people and for generations. And it's hard to have that generational tie, and it was one of the things that by bringing the soldiers that had served back to Korea, it helped to remind our soldiers of just how important the different times in Korea had been.
Well, my dad was one of the soldiers. He was there as a World War II officer. Went to Europe in the late 1940s, early 50s with the 2nd Armored Division, and then he went to Korea just when I was born in 57 with a UN unit. And he would appreciate what you just said, how the efforts of those GIs there in South Korea have resulted in a thriving country, and that's really a great accomplishment to the United States, and also the Army was a big part of that in Korea.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
Oh, go ahead. Tell your thought.
Well, it was very interesting being in Saudi Arabia because it's a completely different environment. It's a very closed society. You're very restricted on what you could do, but at the same time, we had an important mission doing Operation Southern Watch, and we spent a lot of time when I was there in the field training for what might happen, and we spent time grading, providing the physical security on Patriot missile sites. And so that mission was very important, but it's a completely different part of the world to look at Saudi Arabia versus Korea.
And then you made your transition going back into computer science area of the Army intelligence and into the formation of the cyber branch about 10 years ago. How was that transition for you? And then why has it been a good place for you to be in the cyber area of the Army?
Yeah, well, when I was coming out of Korea as a company commander, you hit this point in your career where you've done the work that they want you to do as a young lieutenant and a captain. And then the next part is a service back to the Army position. And so they selected me to go to graduate school and to follow on assignment teaching at West Point. And I got a chance to study mathematics and teach in the math department at West Point. And that was a great opportunity. I was there from 99 to 2003. So the world completely changed at the time that we were there. For me, in addition to the 9/11 experience, we had an opportunity where we were promoted. My class was promoted from captain to major. And as we were promoted to major, we were given new specialties. And so my specialty became operations research as opposed to the infantry specialty I'd had before. And so really set up for a next part of my career to be focused on using technical and quantitative methods to solve decision problems. And we end up building models for some of the most demanding problems that we have across the Department of Defense so that we can validate the decisions that we make, validate the resourcing decisions that we're going to make. And with the huge amount of money that we do spend on the Department of Defense, we want to have models that will be able to ensure that we are spending our money properly and that it is accounted for. It's really very important to have the basis. And as I was going along, we got a chance to, I did another deployment to Baghdad. And in that deployment, we were working with assisting our corps commander in making the best decisions possible. And so that was the new part of the role. Whereas as a young infantryman, you're a company grade officer and you're working with the soldiers. As a field grade officer, I transitioned into where you're supporting the commander. So I spent the next set of my career working on how we best support our leaders. And so I think that put me in a good position as I was coming back to the cyber branch to understand the role of the combat leader, to understand the role of the supporting staff, and where we really needed the cyber branch to be at the intersection of both those skill sets.
Colonel Hall, we've seen a tremendous growth in video games, esports. We just were part of a competition that a college conference did, virtual reality being used, simulators, and the impact that has on youth. Today, some joining the military, some have become hackers. How do you train and recruit talent for the Army, for the cyber branch, and for the Institute?
Well, one of the things that we do at West Point is we're going to try to get a wide sampling of cadets from across the country. And then we have several different activities at West Point that will encourage them to come in and to sample kind of what we have to offer. Part of that is we do have an esports team that allows the cadets to have quite a bit of fun in that particular endeavor, in addition to our hacking teams, our competitive cyber clubs, as well as our policy clubs. And so you really get a chance to get a variety of touches with the different parts of the cyber domain before they would choose to do that. The other thing that we have is we spend some time with the different academic disciplines and trying to let the cadets know about what the different disciplines are about and what they might enjoy. And so we try to find a process by which they'll find a home that fits their needs. We really don't need everyone to be in cyber or everyone to be an infantryman. We need them to kind of find what is their calling. And that's one of the things that we try to do as a part of our new talent-based branching model, which really has come and changed what used to be a senior's decision, where the senior would decide what they wanted to do, into a process where we really spend 4 years with the cadets, helping them understand where they would fit.
And Colonel, we're talking amid the COVID-19 crisis period. The odd thing is we've talked about the concern over computer viruses for years and years, and now a biological one has really crippled parts of American society, affected the military. Is there any connection between the two? And it certainly makes cybersecurity even more paramount for the military.
One of the things that we've been working with our Jack Voltaic series, looking at how we can help municipalities secure themselves against cyber, is the assumption that you can have shared resources. There's kind of this assumption that any attack would be local. And so then if a governor were to set up shared resources among New England, it would be okay because whoever needed the resources would be able to work with their fellow governors. The fallacy of this logic has been clear under the coronavirus, where we come to a point where everyone needs the resources. So it's really one of the things that we've seen is that the secret to municipal success is the National Guard and the National Guard cyber units that the governors have stood up. And we really need to develop these units until each of the governors has their own cyber units. Because we think that if there was a massive attack across the United States, you wouldn't be able to share the resources. And we've worked in municipalities because we don't believe that they'd be able to get federal assistance right away, and that they would have to do the first parts of defending themselves is a requirement of each of the cities and each of the states. And the work of the National Guard in each state really advances that kind of a methodology.
And we just have a couple of minutes left. Where do you see cyber going, the types of threats that could be out there 10 years from now that you've got to prepare the cadets to be thinking about?
Well, we're really moving into a world where we are in constant competition. There is constant competition between the great powers, and our cadets need to be able to understand as leaders in this new world that they're going to be working with influence campaigns, and they're going to be working with psychological operations that might happen inside and outside of cyber, that we're going to be working to establish the truth and to ensure that we know what the reality of the world is, that they're going to be strategic operators right from the very beginning, as everything that they do can be shared around the world. And as we go forward, I think that there's nothing more important than our friends and allies. And we're going to have to continue to work with our friends and allies, both in Europe and in Asia, to ensure that the world stays balanced and that we can continue to enjoy the freedoms that we've become accustomed to here in the United States.
And Colonel Hall, is there a highlight to your career that you're really particularly fond of or proud of that time spent?
I can't imagine a better time or a better place to end than here at West Point. When you're working at West Point, you get a chance to work with cadets, which is the future, but you also get to work with our captains, majors, and lieutenant colonels that will really be running the Army for the next 10 years. So you get a chance to work across the entire spectrum and develop the leaders for our next generation. Our dean likes to talk about having a second graduating class from West Point. So you have the first graduating class, which is the cadets, and you have another graduating class, which is the faculty that leaves West Point and goes back to the Army. And getting a chance to work with both of those classes here is a unique experience, and one that I was very glad to have.
And Colonel Andrew Hall, Director of the Army Cyber Institute at West Point, on behalf of everybody at the American Legion and our group of 350,000 members of the Sons of the American Legion, thank you for your service to our country in a very distinguished career that you have had, and 31 years service in the Army. And just want to wish you the best and hope we can stay in touch.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this chance to talk. The American Legion's important group and an important part of our society.
And thank you very much. We always are proud to represent the 2 million veterans who are members of the organization. And Col Andrew Hall, thank you again. And this is Ken Kreitzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio, part of Squadron 135, located at Post 135 in White Plains, New York. Thank you and have a good day, everybody. Stay well.